If you have struggles with anxiety, worry, fear, or stress, then this is a brand new approach that I think you'll really benefit from. If you have tried things like CBT, mindfulness, acceptance and commitment therapy, tapping, EMDR, and it hasn't worked, that's because mainstream psychology doesn't understand this. So I used to be a fully trained, accredited and experienced psychotherapist, and I was a senior lecturer in cognitive behavior therapy, compassion focused therapy and mindfulness. And I left the profession of psychology because the tools and techniques that we were using on our clients, they weren't working most of the time. I mean, they would work sometimes, but they wouldn't work all the time. And they worked for about 35% of people. And when I came across a brand new paradigm in psychology, which is really a blend of the science of psychology mixed with a little bit of spirituality, which is a surprisingly practical and effective way to understand ourselves and understand what makes us tick, I discovered what I call true freedom from anxiety. And I'm going to explain a little bit about what that is. Really recently, I released a video called Why You Don't Need Tools and Techniques to Manage Anxiety. And it was really popular. And there were a lot of questions that I'm going to answer in this video. So if you haven't already watched that, go back and watch that now. What I'm suggesting is that the key thing that you need to understand to transcend anxiety, to gain actual freedom from anxiety, is seeing the nature of thought, to see how pervasive thought actually is. What I'm suggesting is that thought creates and maintains all anxiety. And when I say all anxiety, I don't mean the type of fear that you experience when you're in a very real, present moment physical threat. That's different. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about the type of anxiety when you're anxious and you can't leave the house, or you're nervous about an exam, or you're trying to get to sleep and you're worrying and you can't drift off, or you're anxious about your partner leaving you, or you're worried that you're not good enough. That type of anxiety. So worry, anxiety, fear. All of that anxiety is both created and sustained by using the power of thought, by innocently misusing the power of thought. Anxiety can't exist without thought. And I don't mean your personal thinking. Personal thinking creates anxiety too. But think of thought as bigger than that. Thought as a principle, sometimes called universal thought, is the way that you, make sense of your experience, make sense of your environment. Thought is almost like a mental energy that we use to make sense of our life. Now, if you're anything like the old me, I had a lot of conditioning in my formative years where I was scared. So I learned that I was very much on my own and that I had to do things by myself and that people were mean and that the world was scary and that life was hard. And that was my conditioning, or the way I think of it. It was my training. It was training my brain. And when that happens during your formative years, it forms what we call in psychology your personality. Now, you can think of your personality as a series of habits and preferences. And it's really important to know that your personality is not fixed. Like, most of what you call your personality is just your conditioning. Like, it's your upbringing. It's what happened to you and what experiences you had in your formative years. So if you describe yourself as an anxious person, that's not your personality. That's because of past experiences. And you can completely and totally gain freedom from that when you see that it's thought that is both creating and maintaining your experience of life. So yeah, if you're anything like me and you had any of these beliefs about the world, like life is hard, people are mean, kind of things like that, that becomes a lens at which you're looking at life through. So we don't see life as it is. We see life through a lens. And this lens is created by experiences we've had. That's what I call thought. Now, the more that you raise your consciousness and your awareness to the fact of thought, the more you're going to be free of anxiety. And it's a bit like a seesaw. So when you're in a seesaw, one end comes up, one end comes down. And if you put thought and consciousness on this seesaw, the more thought looks like your reality, the less conscious you are. In other words, the more that thought doesn't look like thought, the less conscious you are. And the more conscious you are, the more thought looks like what it is, a transitory, fleeting experience. So a lot of the questions I had in this previous video were kind of like, well, what if the thing causing my anxiety isn't created by thought? What if it's created by something real? What I'm suggesting is that what you think is real is still experienced by you via thought. So someone said, well, what if I have like a lump on my skin and I'm worried about my health? Well, a lump on your skin can't create anxiety. Only thought does that. The more that you can see that it's thought that's creating and maintaining your anxiety, the more free you're going to be. Someone asked me, well, what if it's not my thinking? What if I'm having panic attacks? Well, panic attacks are caused by thought, and they're also maintained by thought. They're maintained by a fear of having another panic attack. I'm asserting that everything that creates your anxiety is thought. And the more present you can get, the more conscious you can get, the more aware you can get, the more you'll see that too. And this is the only thing you ever need to know about anxiety. I'm going to invite you to take a look at this. See if you can spot what's thought and what's not. And the game is to raise your level of presence, raise your level of awareness. And the more able you are to do that, the more free you're going to be from anxiety. So I really hope that's helpful. I do have a course called Freedom from Anxiety, which is kind of like the next level in this. And it's my website, chris-finn.com/freedom from anxiety.